All right, guys, welcome to your lesson for today. We're going to be talking about proportional relationships and how to find the cross product to solve a proportion. So make sure that you're writing this down. You'll have an assignment on this tonight and then a quiz tomorrow over what we've done so far with proportional relationships. So we're going to jump right in and go ahead and start. I will be collecting your notes and your assignment, and that will all be on the same paper. So make sure that you're writing your name on the top, and let's get started. So the cross product of proportions are equal. That's your first fill in the blank. It says a proportion is an equation that states that two ratios are equal. And this is an example. So a proportion would be something like this. 1/2 equals 2/4. It's the same fraction, but written in a different way. Another example would be something like this. 3/4 is the same as 6/8. Again, when you reduce these fractions down to their simplest form, you get the same fraction, just written a different way. Okay, so the cross product is a way that we can solve a proportion. So let's do a quick example of that. A cross product would be something like this. 1/2 equals x/10. To do a cross product, basically we just cross multiply and then we can solve for the thing that we don't know, which is represented by x. So let's go ahead and do this. 1 times 10 is 10. That's my first cross product. Now let's go the other direction. 2 times x is 2x. And I'm going to set these equal to each other. So 10 equals 2x. Now our last step when you take a cross product is to divide by the number in front of your variable. So that's 2. So we'll divide each side by 2. And we would get 10 divided by 2, which is 5, equals 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we would get 5 equals x. Okay, so what that means if we were to solve or plug in our answer into our original proportion, what we would have is 1/2 equals 5, which is what we got, over 10. And that is a correct proportion because when you simplify 1/2 and 5/10, we get 1/2 on both sides. So let's practice this with some numbers that aren't quite as obvious. For your homework, you'll want to use a calculator. So we have b/15 equals 66/90. So to solve this, our first step is going to be to cross multiply. And 90 times b is just 90b. Now we're going to do the same thing, but going the opposite direction. 15 times 66 equals 990. Now our last step will be to divide each side by the number in front of our variable. And so I have a 90 in front of b, so I'm going to undo that multiplication by dividing each side by 90. 90 divided by itself is 1, and I'm left with b equals 11. Now the way that I could check my work is I could just plug in 11 back into the original problem. So I'd plug in 11 for b, and what I would have is 11/15 equals 66/90. And the way that I would check to see if 11 is the correct answer is I would simplify both fractions down and make sure that I had the same fraction on each side, or the same ratio. Okay, let's try another one. We've got x/4 equals 7/20. So our first step will be to multiply x times 20. So we'll get 20x. Okay, now I've got equals in the middle, and then I'll go the other direction. So 4 times 7 is 28. Sometimes I think of this as butterfly multiplication as well, because when you're done, you have a shape that looks like a butterfly. All right, so our last step is to divide each side by 20. Anything divided by itself is 1, so I have 1x on the left, or just x. And 28 divided by 20 is 1.4. So that's my answer. All right, so let's just try a couple more to make sure that we've got it. For letter C, I've got C over 14. 7 over 14 equals C over 12. So our first step is to multiply 7 times 12. That would give us 84. On the right side now, I've got 14 times C, which is just 14C. Okay. Our last step is to divide each side by 14. And what I would get is 6 equals C. Now, it's important to understand that you can check your work. So to check our work, we'll just plug 6, which equals C, back into the problem. And what we would have is 7 over 14 equals 6 over 12. And that is the same ratio on each side, because 7 over 14 is the same as 1/2, simplified, and 6 over 12 is the same as 1/2. So as you can see, when you plug in 6 for C, that makes this problem correct. All right, so that is all for the proportions we're going to solve. Let's go ahead. Oh, we've got actually one more, so let's go ahead and finish this up. So again, I've got a decimal, no difference, it's just same idea. So I've got 6.8 times 50, and that gives us 340 equals t times 34 is 34t, and make sure that you write your number in front of your variable. That's just the way that we do it. And then our last step is to divide each side by the number in front of your variable, and what we would get is 340 divided by 34 is 10. Okay, let's try a word problem. You can solve word problems using proportions with the same method that we have been doing. You just have to make sure that you set everything up correctly. So it says the wait time to ride a roller coaster is 20 minutes when 160 people are in line. At this rate, how long is the wait time when 220 people are in line? So there's two things in this problem. You have wait time, so how long do people have to wait, and you have the people. So when you set up a proportion, you have to make sure that your units match on each side of the problem. So let's set it up like this. Let's put minutes on top and people on the bottom. Now, you could choose to put people on top and minutes on the bottom, but you would just have to make sure that you have the same thing on each side of the equal sign. All right, so let's write this out. The wait time to ride a roller coaster is 20 minutes when 160 people are in line. So I'm going to have my 20 minutes on top when 160 people are in line. Okay, so we're going to set this equal because this is a proportional relationship. This last part, it says, at this rate, how long is the wait time when 220 people are in line? So what we don't know is the wait time, so X represents our minutes, and then 220 represents how many people are in line. So to solve this, again, it's the same method. 20 times 220 is 4,400 equals 160 times x is 160x, and then our last step is to divide each side by 160. Okay, and what we get is 27.5, and remember that we're talking about minutes, so 27.5 minutes equals x. So that would be our answer. All right, we'll finish up the last two in the next couple minutes, and that will be in the second video.